Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right in to look at two fascinating countries that sit on exact opposite sides of the globe, and we're going to unpack how their cultures are just as reversed as their geography. We're basing this whole journey on a deeply insightful blog by Atsuko Natalia Hoshi, exploring the profound cultural opposites of Japan and Brazil. So get ready to see the world from a completely flipped perspective.
I want you to take a moment and just imagine a place where almost everything you know is flipped upside down. Picture a world where the time on the clock, the seasons of the year, the very structure of the language, and even how people experience their deepest emotions are completely reversed. It sounds kind of like a premise for a sci-fi story, right? But this isn't fiction at all. This is the everyday, lived reality of navigating between Japan and Brazil.
Section 1. The literal opposite of Japan. Geographic reversals.
Geographically speaking, they are literal opposites. If you're standing in Japan and someone asks you where Brazil is, you could literally point straight down at the ground. Japan is up in the northern hemisphere, Brazil's in the southern hemisphere. Because they're basically 12 hours apart, Japan's morning is Brazil's night. So if it's a beautifully sunny summer morning at 8 a.m. in Tokyo, well, it's a chilly winter evening at 8 p.m. in Sao Paulo. They're just a perfectly mirrored reflection of one another in time and space.
And navigating this exact mirror is our expert guide for this explainer, Atsuko Natalia Hoshi. She's a second-generation Japanese-Brazilian who was born and raised in Santos, Brazil, and now lives in Tokyo. She's actually a director at the Japan-Brazil Central Association, a licensed Brazilian dentist, and the head of H&A Consulting. So she lives and breathes these exact cultural opposites every single day, which really makes her the perfect person to decode this fascinating relationship for us.
Section 2. Sakasama. A language in reverse.
To really understand this, we need to learn a brilliant Japanese word, Sakasama. Pronounced Sakasama, it literally means reverse, upside down, or opposite. And Sakasama is going to act as our perfect anchor for today. Because, the closer we look, the more we realize that the way these two cultures construct their very ideas is entirely backward to one another.
Okay, let's dive into this with a really practical example from the business world. In Japan, just like in English, they use the acronym IT for information technology. But in Brazil, that exact same concept is Sakasama. It's flipped to TI. This is because in Portuguese, the phrase is tecnologia da informação. The noun comes first and the descriptor comes second.
And we see this structural flip everywhere. Take the absolute hottest topic in tech right now, artificial intelligence, or AI. In Japan, it's AI. In Brazil, it's IA, which stands for Inteligência Artificial. This simple grammatical flip is actually a tiny window into a much larger reality. To speak to one culture from the perspective of the other, you have to completely reverse the order of your thoughts.
Section 3. High context versus high emotion. Communication styles.
Japan is famously what we call a high-context culture. Historically built around village farming and communal rice cultivation, survival literally depended on group harmony. Being ostracized, a concept they call murahachibu, was disastrous. So the Japanese developed a highly indirect communication style, preferring to read the air and leave things unsaid to avoid conflict. Brazil, on the other hand, is a nation of immigrants. And when you have a melting pot of totally different cultures and backgrounds, you just can't rely on unspoken rules. You have to be explicit, direct, and highly emotional to make sure your intentions are understood and to build trust quickly.
Now, what's really interesting about this matrix is seeing these massive opposites side by side. Japan gets 5 stars for reading the air and silence, while Brazil gets just 1 star. Conversely, Brazil gets 5 stars for emotional expression and skinship, areas where Japan scores incredibly low. But look right there in the middle. Both Japan and Brazil score a perfect 5 for valuing human relations. They both deeply desire connection. They just use entirely opposite Sakasama methods to achieve it.
This deep desire to maintain human relations explains the yes and no dynamic perfectly. In Japan, saying no directly is often avoided just to protect harmony. Instead, a yes frequently just means, I hear you, or I'm listening. But over in Brazil, a clear no is considered completely polite and absolutely necessary for authentic communication. If a Brazilian says yes, it means they explicitly agree with you.
Section 4. Harmony and expression. Everyday interactions.
Picture yourself giving a gift to a colleague in Japan. Their reaction is likely going to be a very modest, polite, and perhaps slightly shy thank you. The profound gratitude is absolutely there, but it's shown through quiet humility. The lack of explosive emotion doesn't mean they don't like it. It's a sign of respectful, high-context appreciation.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast. Hand that exact same gift to a colleague in Brazil, and brace yourself for an explosive reaction. Wow! Thank you so much. I love it. You remembered my favorite color. It's loud, it's verbal, it's highly expressive, and for sure, it will almost certainly be accompanied by a very warm physical hug.
This brings us back to a super interesting detail about our expert, Atsuko. Remember how I mentioned she's a licensed dentist? Well, that is highly relevant here. Brazilians engage in very physical communication. They stand close, make deep eye contact, and frequently hug. And because they speak with such proximity and expression, there's a very high focus on the mouth and teeth. So oral care isn't just about health in Brazil. It's quite literally a crucial part of your communication toolkit.
But as with everything, there are downsides to every cultural extreme. Japan's intense prioritization of group harmony and reading the air over individual expression has unfortunately given the world adopted terms like karushi, which translates to death by overwork. When you literally cannot say no and you prioritize the organization over your own boundaries, it can lead to some truly tragic societal problems.
Section 5. The key to true communication. Bridging the gap.
So the crucial point we're getting to is this. True communication is far more than just swapping vocabulary words. You could perfectly memorize the Portuguese dictionary, but if you speak it with Japanese cultural instincts, avoiding eye contact, using indirect language, and refusing to express emotion, you won't actually be understood in Brazil. True fluency requires understanding cultural differences, mastering emotional contexts, and adapting to the social habits of the people you're speaking with.
And this is exactly why Atsuko Natalia Hoshi founded the H&A Portuguese School. The school's entire mission is built on this very philosophy. They don't just teach the language. They blend Portuguese instruction with deep integrated cultural training. Whether it's through custom-tailored lessons or immersion courses, they prepare professionals to actually connect on a human level, completely understanding that essential cultural context.
So I want to leave you with a question to think about. Consider your own communication style. Are you highly direct, or are you a master at reading the room? If you were to move to a Sakasama culture tomorrow, a place where the rules of interaction were completely reversed, which of your deeply ingrained communication habits would be the absolute hardest to flip? Think about that, because understanding our own cultural programming is really the very first step to truly understanding someone else's. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the amazing differences that make our world so fascinating.